2019, had this moment where I went to a conference and saw a statistic that just gutted me. It just was this line in the sand about how few organizations and nonprofits, especially, convert data to decision making. And that caused me to shift my entire practice, let go of that brand, and start the human stack.
As role models for future generations, we're building a world where wisdom and consciousness rise, harmonizing life with nature and all species. Join us. Together, let's create a balanced, sustainable future for all.
Well, welcome everyone. One of the things I always like to do when we have these fireside chats is just kind of walk through some of the do's and don'ts and kind of get through that. So, first, welcome to today's fireside chat. I'm excited to be talking with Tim Lockie. He and I go back to when I was doing this whole concept on perpetual good in the metaverse, and we started connecting and talking, and that led into a whole conversation and a whole experience in humanizing tech. So it's been a great conversation with him. And so, Tim, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. It's nice to meet you all.
And so before we get into introductions and everything else, just a couple of quick points. One of the things that we like to do is get through some conversation at the beginning. Then we'll have some Q&A where everyone can kind of raise their hand. If you don't know, there's the raise hand kind of button down below. And just raise your hand. We'll bring you on, let you ask your question. Try to keep the questions to the topics we're talking about. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're able to kind of engage in the conversation, not just with Christina and myself, but also with the community. That's the whole goal of this fireside. With that, let's see. The other thing to kind of highlight, of course, like we're going to be doing for the next 6 weeks, is our TLL Summit. So definitely don't forget to go and check out our techleadershiplab.org/TLL Summit page and learn more about our summit and what we're doing. And Tim will be present in spirit, if not in body. So definitely check that out. With that, let's just kind of go in first. Christina, as always, just give everyone a quick rundown on you, why we're here, and what TLL is.
Thank you, Carlos. I have no idea why I'm here. Enjoying that. This is our second fireside chat. It's a different vibe. That's why we are testing. Everything about TLL is action. It's exponential growth. It's testing. It's taking the pulse of people, what they want, and how we can connect more for a better impact. And we are getting close to an amazing inaugural summit. It's everything about the summit. We are full gear, preparing all the details and getting awesome speakers and making a stand for why we are here to create a real impact and solving those SDGs sooner. Yeah. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Tim, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tim Lockie. I live in Bozeman, Montana. If you have seen the show Yellowstone, it supposedly takes place here, but it was not filmed here. So don't, but I live in kind of cowboy country. I'm fourth generation in Montana, but I spent about 13 years in San Francisco, where I started a company that helped nonprofits with technology. Did that for a little over 10 years, built a whole team around it. And in 2019, had this moment where I went to a conference and saw a statistic that just gutted me. It just was this line in the sand about how few organizations and nonprofits especially convert data to decision making. And that caused me to shift my entire practice, let go of that brand, and start the human stack as a way to say what we really need to do is help humans use technology, not just acquire technology, which is a lot of times what's happening.
I think that's a really good way to put it. Use it, not acquire it. And there's a lot to that. Well, and I guess that kind of leads into my first question that I always like to ask our speakers is why? Why did you get into the human stack? Why is this important? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why you?
I think me because I'm uniquely positioned to think about it, and I can say a little bit more about that. But the why I care, this is work I can't not do. Like I just am compelled to do it because it 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 hurts me to just watch people struggle with technology and not realize how much simpler it could be. And I think specifically about Nancy in Connecticut. I don't know Nancy; she's not a real person, but you'll recognize her. She's working as a back office person at a small or mid-sized nonprofit. She's been there for 8 to 10 years. People really don't know what she's done, and she doesn't know it, but she's actually a very accomplished technologist. But because she didn't study technology, she doesn't know that she's doing something important. And the whole organization is leveraged by their technology and by their finances. Those two pieces are the core resources of modern organizations. And everybody understands the finance side of that, and people don't realize how vital and key her role is for their organization's success. And that invisibility is why I started the Human Stack, so that we can shine a light on that and show people how important it is to train and develop that role, and how it's so doable. It's so possible. We can do this, and it would shift the entire industry. We could create so much more impact in the world. So that's why me.
I think that that will resonate with a lot of folks, especially folks that are in the nonprofit space who, I mean, it's all about caring, right? And today on Valentine's Day, it's just kind of a nice connection, right? To be like, let's care about each other.
Yeah,
So
right.
as you kind of start talking about, you know, the whys and how important the idea of the person is to the tech stack, right? You know, it kind of plays off your company's name, right? The human stack.
Mhm.
And how how do organizations look at or integrate the concept of the human stack into the tech stack, and why is it important?
I get a lot of questions about the name, and I'm trying out a new one. Y'all should let me know if this lands for you, okay? But
Oh, wait,
if
wait,
the
wait. I just heard an opportunity for engagement. So
oh,
if people love it, we'll get a hearts up. If people are we'll do a thumbs.
perfect. Okay,
All right, all right.
that is such a great idea, Carlos. I love that.
Let's do
Okay,
it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
if the tech stack solves human problems with technology, then the human stack solves tech problems with humans. And the revelation I had is that as a technologist, I see tech as the solution. But for the other 92% of the world, they see tech as the problem. And we need to approach that from their lens. All right. Oh, I'm
I
seeing
see a
some
lot of
hearts.
hearts.
Seeing some hearts there. Thank you, everybody.
Oh,
That's really helpful.
and a couple. Okay, I like that. Maury has the thumb. Okay, good, good. This is what we like because then now we can have dialogue later about that. So thank you, Maury. Good, good. I
Happy
like this.
Happy Valentine's Day. I mean, it's important. We always forget, but we are under the umbrella of love, everything what we are doing. So yeah, it's fun that we are meeting today.
So Tim, so kind of walk us through how does the human stack kind of fit into the tech stack? And I think you have a slide that can also kind of speak to some of that.
Yeah. The first thing I want to say is that as technologists, and I'm not sure who is a technologist who isn't, it doesn't really matter. But when technologists think about a tech stack, from the base code all the way to user experience, every level of that stack needs to be evaluated for interoperability, for accuracy of data, for the way that it will transfer data across, that it can speak to each other. A tech stack is a community of technologies that work together for a common purpose. And in technology, we have that down so well. In fact, we have two different methodologies that we use, either waterfall or agile. I mean, there's some blends of those, but those are the big ones. And we use those as an assembly line to create technology. And we are very good at doing that, like incredibly good at doing that, especially as the cost per code, has come down with low code, no code solutions. But we haven't ever taken that level of care and consideration and intentional design and applied it to the humans that work towards a common purpose as well. So if the tech stack is a community of technologies, there's a community of humans that also need to have interoperability. They need to be speaking to each other really clearly. They need to know who's doing what. They need to have all of those structures in place. And we can't use the same methodology for those two different stacks because the base code of the tech stack is binary zeros and ones, right? It's always solving for true, false. And the base code of the human stack is belonging. Humans are herd animals. We want to belong, and we will trade almost anything to belong more. And so it's really important to understand that the human stack is always going to be a relationship between an accountability structure and a responsibility structure. And so if you look at my logo in the background, you can see there's a little triangle on top, and that's the accountability person. And that there's two little feet down below that. Those are like the boots on the ground person that's in the weeds doing the work. That's the responsibility person. And the human stack, the real magic here, there's always those two roles. The question is, are they aligned? Are they connected? Are they moving in the same direction? Are they structured correctly? And we don't have a lot of ways of evaluating that. And when it's not working correctly, we don't always know what to do about it.
That's a good point. And I know that in a lot of different ways in terms of like strategic planning, there's a lot of alignment of resourcing and, the idea of being able to understand how to align and kind of get all resources pointing in the right direction. But normally you don't really see, you see more about how the tools are going to be used in a tech strategy versus the alignment of that tech towards a goal or a purpose, and how it aligns with the utilization and the boots on the ground kind of focus. And not just the staff, but also the community that engages in that technology.
Yeah, it's so true. And Greg's got it, that it has to be more than one person. It cannot just, like, one person is a human, not a human stack, right? So that's the smallest human stack that you can do. I'm going to walk through, if it's okay, I want to take 4 minutes so you can time me and let me, like, people put up a time when it's done, because
don't
I
say
will
that.
ramble
Christina
on.
loves timers.
Do it. I'm all for it.
I really can't do it. Just a second. Yeah, I'm doing that.
Oh,
No,
you see,
don't challenge her unless you really think you can do it, because she's gonna put it up ASAP.
I'm doing it now. Go ahead and start. Okay, here's what a human stack looks like. Okay, so you've got a responsible person, and you've got an accountability person, right? And that's the human stack. Okay, I want to talk about this with Bridget and Jennifer. Bridget is the CEO of a local nonprofit, and Jennifer is her COO. They work at One Valley Community Foundation, and they were really struggling with Salesforce. I know Salesforce really well, and they came to me and said, should we get a different CRM? And I said, maybe you should, but first we want to look at your human stack. And so we did. We looked at what was going on with them, and we evaluated that. I've got a bunch of different tools and all this stuff. And what we found was that Jennifer had a lot of imposter syndrome, and she thought someone else needed to come in and be an expert. And so that left her kind of 1 foot off the ground, imbalanced, right? And Bridget, who's a great leader, did not know how to provide leadership and alignment around the tech. She didn't know how to support Jennifer. So you can just see right there, that is not a good human stack. Like, they're very good at what they do. That's not the problem. They've got the right pieces. They're just not put in the right order. So that's what it looks like if you've got two people that are not, doing the tech stack correctly. You can, or the human stack correctly. There's a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to skip on this next. Well, I'm just going to stop there. How does that make sense? Can you, as you look at that, can you see places you've worked, organizations you've worked with? Does it, like, tell me about some of that, either in the comments or wherever else? I would love to hear what have your experiences been around places
let's
where,
add it to the comments.
Yeah, in the comments. Tell me about some. Yeah, it does happen almost everywhere. Yeah, this is a pretty universal issue.
And that's, that's the human element, right?
Yeah.
And I remember a lot of times, the problem exists between screen and chair, right? Why? It's the human element.
Right.
And
yeah,
so
okay.
It's a lot of that.
To that point, Carlos, that's a really good point, because there is, like, what is it? Picnic, right? Problem in chair, not in computer, which I love that acronym. But you could have it where the person in the chair is brilliant at computing and still not be able to make it work. Exactly. If those aren't aligned, and there's a bunch of other ways that they can be misaligned, but until those are aligned, there's no sense in digging too far into your tech stack. You're going to have data issues related to that. If you have the right, or if you have the wrong tools, just deciding on which tools, you're going to have the leader deciding on tools and they're misaligned to the responsible person, who's the one that's actually going to not just use that, but tell other people how to use that. And they're going to start a water cooler campaign against this tech because they don't like it, right? So, and that's going to create a lot of disruption, right?
I got to say, okay, my first ERP implementation back in the 90s, 7-figure implementation, we had completed, had gone live, and our director of customer support pretty much killed the project because she was not happy with it and it didn't align with what she wanted to achieve. 7 figures. And so think about it. People go and fix the problem, right? Quote unquote, right? But it's not the problem they're fixing. What they're doing is just trying to address a symptom, throwing a lot of money at it, but the root cause, that unalignment, right? That misalignment is really the root cause that needs to be addressed. And so just kind of aligning the human stack might actually save you 7 figures in the tech
and what,
stack.
24 months, right? Like 7 figures and 24 months, and the return on investment of the opportunity cost of those 7 figures, which could have been applied to something else. Like, the numbers are huge for this misalignment. It is the least expensive, highest return on investment, highest return on information move that you can make. And it has, I believe I'm creating a category that does not exist. It has been invisible, and I've just brought tools and measurement to it. And yeah, it is huge. Just like you're saying, Carlos, like, the numbers are so depressingly large. And okay, that's the financial picture. We're creating trauma for people when this stuff doesn't work, right? So this applies, I promise. When my daughter was about 6 years old, she went on a trip with her grandmother and everything went wrong. Right? Like, luggage got lost, wrong airport, like, everything was going wrong. And my daughter held it together all day long because her grandmother said, when we get to the end of the day where we're going, whatever, I'm going to get you chocolate ice cream. And when we got to the counter and got to the front of the line, ordered chocolate ice cream, the man said, "We're out of chocolate."
Oh,
boom, right?
She lost
my daughter falls. Yes, Layla, it's so, yeah, absolutely.
It's the straw.
All of us, can you feel that emotion? That emotion you feel right there, that, like, oh, no. That is so, like, do we pay attention to what it means that in 90 seconds, I can tell you a story about someone you've never met and your heart breaks for them? Like, this is so powerful. So powerful. Anyway, if I had been in line 3 people back and I saw that, I would have thought that is a spoiled little brat and her dad should have been a better dad, right? Because I don't understand the context. And to me, it just looks
Right.
like a spoiled girl that didn't get her way, right? Okay, I work with executive teams and I work with consultants all the time who are completely unsympathetic to the degree of disruption they're creating for their staff. Sometimes on time, on budget means you're creating a disruption curve that is so high, it goes over change saturation levels. My daughter experienced something called change saturation. She could take disruption after disruption all day long, and then one thing put her over this line of change saturation. And humans, when we hit that line, we have a negative emotional response. And if you do that multiple times too often, you start to create trauma around that for people. And when you create trauma for people, you have to deal with that trauma or it won't go away, which is why even when you do roll out that ERP, Carlos, a lot of people don't like the ERP. They're mad at it. They'll tell you that it takes too long, but actually it just created trauma for them. And now they don't like the thing that created trauma for them. And what are they going to do? They're going to turn to spreadsheets and do their work there because that's what gives them mastery and control and relief. Exactly. Yeah. And so we just don't realize how these issues are very tangibly interrupting our work. If you care about people, you'll start to pay attention to this. But if you don't, and you just care about money or return on information, you'll also start to focus on this because it's a major cost center for organizations. And right now it's invisible.
Well, and actually, I want to bring Christina in because I know that Christina, when we were talking, that was one of the things that resonated with her when you and her talked was this concept of how is technology creating trauma? And it kind of will lead into like the next topic. But Christina, just, your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. I would also bring a human-centric observation with ERP and your acronyms, Carlos, because it's one of those things that you need to take in consideration with people that many don't know the acronyms or they don't like. I am one of those people who is not a fan of acronyms, and usually someone who's not good with titles and names, it's something that bothered me a lot. But this brings me to exactly this conversation. I was so drawn to Tim and his experience and what he's doing when he mentioned the word trauma, because even if I don't mention this a lot, I'm very much involved in mental health. And through my career, I was very, very close to my people all the time. Not just everyone was my people, because this is how I relate. I see people who I spend a lot of hours together, they are very close to me and they can be in different periods of time. And so employees of the companies I worked with as a fractional executive in multiple capacities, they were also my people. And so I got the pulse of those people firsthand. And many times I was the only person who they truly rely on to come and tell me very, very personal, traumatic things. And the management and the leadership, they had nothing. They didn't know nothing. I entered in companies where there were like mocking, resentments and conflicts that were not solved for 2 years, even between partners. Yeah. And so those were absolutely crushing. And so the first thing I did is just to create a mediation session where I was a mediator. I don't know how many companies I entered to fix problems started with such things in week 2 or 3, and they didn't know. And things were solvable very easily. But also I had contact with people who were experiencing trauma, and I'm in the unfortunate situation to have in my past multiple calls where you're next to killing yourself. And this comes also from my background, from medical background, and being very involved in including psychiatric situations, but not just that, when people are borderline very, very close to just don't take it. And many times I saw that this trauma is related to situations from their work. And just let me to mute here, Chris. And so it was very, very important for me and then the leadership to detect, because what responsibility can you have to know that such things happen in the background and in your backyard and you have no idea. And then you lose a person that you could save just because you didn't thought that these things matter. Technology disruption matters, or just caring about them, or the element of belonging to care about them. I had ex-employees who called me in December 31 because they separated from their wives and they were out of in the open without a house, without nowhere to spend their New Year's Eve. And they felt safe enough to call me. And it happened even for after years of things to reach out to me. They didn't even work with me anymore to tell me something that they said, I will explode if I cannot share this with anyone. So I think this kind of connectivity at a human level to allow people to come to you and share things because they trust you and because they know you care, it's absolutely crucial at any level in every company and moving further with technology.
Christina, that's so beautifully said. And I think I forgot to say it, but the core task in creating the human stack is accomplishing what you accomplished with the people that you were working with there, which is that you had an authentic, transparent relationship with them. You could tell each other the truth. And this is the barrier to a healthy human stack. If you cannot tell the truth and if you cannot be transparent, that's not completely transparent. There's some things that leadership has to know. Like, I get that. But if you create a culture that is cover your ass culture and people are hiding things, like you're creating almost like trust silos inside of your organization, that then there's only so much that you can do to align your human stack. There's always going to be a separation there. Christina, what you did is you created that level of connection with someone. And I want to say two things about that. One is, this is what we were built for. Whether, like, who knows how we came here, metaphysics aside, like whatever, this is how humans find purpose and meaning with each other. The second thing I want to say is, this is so important in creating positive workplace environments. And the same things that create positive workforce environments create strong culture that can support the tech stack. And so they're very intertwined, those things. So I'm really glad that you're that kind of a person that people will feel that freedom to call.
And talking about oh, go ahead.
I would love a question here, Tim, because I'm so curious. I know we are very aligned and it's absolutely amazing what you're doing, because I know that you get to a resistance at during the first days always. Do you have any first very clear, easy step that you are doing when you are entering in a company and you want them to make them tech stack ready?
Yeah. Great question. I'll put a link. Okay. So it's interesting. I don't usually start with a high emotional piece with companies. What I want to do is show them that the human stack is actually a real thing that's measurable, and that their leadership can take a look at that and actually move and work with. And the reason I want to do that is that we're using the wrong words to describe some things. So one of the words that we use a lot is adoption, right? We have low adoption of technology. And I want to just talk about back office, like people inside of an organization. We don't have an adoption problem with people inside of an organization. If they're not using technology, we have an accountability problem. Those are not the same thing. Accountability is the way you create belonging in a performance structure, right? If you're on an Olympic team and you can't make the qualifiers are a level of accountability, and you don't make the team. That's fine. No hard feelings. That's the way it goes. Families, you don't cut people from the team on families, right? Like, that's a different level, and adoption belongs in that world. But when we're talking about creating impact, that's a performance endeavor. Now, we should be well aligned. We should be human. We should love each other in the process. But at the end of the day, we're trying to get something done. And we need to do that through accountability and responsibility, right? So the first thing I do is show them that there are 5 other factors besides just which tech you're using. And so that quiz, and here's a QR code if you want to go see it. That quiz will give you results something like this. There are 3 tech stack scores: solution fit, data quality, and utilization, and 3 human stack scores, which are system sustainability, digital strategy, and accountability. And you can look at these scores on a spectrum of things being right sized or wrong sized or accurate, inaccurate. Like these are on a spectrum. And because of that, they are measurable, including things like accountability. The worst form of accountability is when people are ignored, and the best form is when people are rewarded, right? So, and then if you take that as a whole team, so to answer your question, and I'm doing this for a large organization right now, where I've had over 100 of their team take this quiz and leave comments. And this is not their results, but I can create results like this and take it to their leaders and say, here's what's going on. And I can even break that down per department and show them their data, because we need data around this. It is not like just emotions. These are hard numbers that we need to look at and say, okay, this is the shape of things.
I think
so that's why I start.
Yeah, I think that is one of the challenges that organizations find, is that a lot of times the human element, the emotional element, is hard to quantify. And so with organizations and businesses, a lot of time it's very transactional. I think there was a post recently where we were saying, that it's not about the transactions, it's about the engagement, right? And so when you start looking at just how someone is transacting, and then you use that to qualify success, right? Your key performance indicators and so forth. What happens when you can't quantify it the same way you can quantify a transaction? And so it makes it difficult for people to kind of relate to it. And so being able to create quantifiable values that you can look at and measure, it helps individuals that think very process or think very in terms of measurements understand the impact.
Yeah, it's true. And then behind all of this, Carlos, and you know this because we've talked in the past, I've built a methodology that I can use to say, if you give me 18 to 36 months, I can completely reshape your digital culture. And I can do that for the same reason that I used to do the same thing with someone's tech stack, because I had a methodology and a team that knew how to use it. And I could say, no matter what your tech stack looks like, I'll use this methodology to handle the variance of it, right? And so the methodology that I use has monthly KPIs in it that I can look at and say we're making progress or not. And we can hold accountability on whether that progress is being made. And so, measuring that is really, really critical. Not just measuring it once, but continually measuring it. I think that's a really important observation. The other thing I want to say about that is we've got to start thinking about this as habits. I don't remember who said it on one of the threads the other day, but they said, we want this to be action-oriented conversations. I am here for that. I love that, because a lot of times the human side of tech is just kumbaya land where we're all trying to feel warm and fuzzy. And I'm not up for that. That's not why I'm here. I want to win the Olympics on human stack. I want us to see teams that are creating absolutely undisputable, crazy good results, like Downtown Boxing Gym, who's been doing this methodology for 4 years, focused on both the human and tech stack. They've got 2 part-time staff that are outperforming entire tech teams of, large, more than $10 million organizations. And they're doing it part-time, and they're a little bit bored. They have created over 1,000 internal requests for continuous improvement in that 4 years. And they've solved over 150 different data goals month over month. These are the kind of results that we should see. And every month, their leaders on the phone with them to say, what's your goal for the coming month? And did you meet your goals for last month? You know, and this is a leader. It's like in 2019, this organization was paper and pencil, like zero digital maturity or skills. That's what I'm talking about. We should be able to see that as a normal expression of our work in professional services around this. And right now we don't, we're guessing about how to do it. And that's making me crazy. So is that helpful? Does that make sense?
For sure. We are all about action orientation. And this is one of the words I constantly repeat all the time, because I believe our team is allergic to just talk without action. And that is one of the traits of TLL. We want to bring things to the next level because we do have what it takes to solve those SDGs. We shouldn't have them with the right leadership and activity. So yeah, let's just do that. I would open up, Carlos, if you agree, for questions, and would love to see some faces coming with some caveats to be specific on the topic and take away as much as we can, because many times we receive feedback later on, that, okay, we went sideways, and we are transparent at TLL all the time. We are a family vibe construct, a unity vibe, but also we constantly improve. And one of the frequent things was this. So let's ask questions, quality questions that can inspire and help us all to grow. And just unmute yourself and jump in, ask Tim directly to see your faces and hear your beautiful voices.
Yeah. If you have questions or comments, definitely we're getting to the point where we would open it up. So raise your hands and we'll bring you, we'll add you. While you guys kind of think through your questions, Tim, the AI is a big disruptor. And, just like when the internet came out, that was a big disruptor, and other things have been. Do you see some similarities between tech adoption in the 90s and the 2000s with tech adoption in the 2020s and 30s? Like, what are some of the facets that you kind of see? And then we'll get to Greg.
Yeah. When we're talking about AI right now, almost all of what we mean is ChatGPT or its counterpart, right? Like, so which AI we're talking about really matters, because nobody's confusing analysis, AIs that are running numbers in the background. They're not confusing those with humans, because right now, for the first time, AI sounds and feels more human than it ever has. So the idea of base code is really critical here. The base code of AI is still zeros and ones, true, false statements, and it is just trying to anticipate through language models how to sound more like a human, right? It does not care about belonging, though. So that's really important to always keep AI on the tech stack. And humans are belonging focused. And so that's one of the core questions. And that's important. That just matters in the conversation, because we should not confuse those two things. Second thing I'll say there is, like, AI is just becoming ubiquitous with tech. In 2 years, we won't have a lot of AI conversations. We will just have a lot of, how are you using AI, right? And everybody is using AI to some degree, even if they don't know it per se. So, I mean, I think the beautiful part of what we're seeing right now is what technologists have always said, which is, when people understand how to make it useful, they will use it. And with generative AI, I remember where I was the first time I put something in ChatGPT, and I just said, write me a poem about bad donor data. And it wrote me 5 stanzas of a poem that rhymed and was brilliant. And I was like, this is different. That's all it took. Like, one question to it. And I was like, we are in a new world. So I definitely think that that's happening. I think that the adoption curve is high. I'm part of fundraise.ai, which is an organization and community looking at how we do fundraising and create frameworks for AI. So I think those are really important. I will say AI stands to be one of the great equalizers globally. And what I want to see is more AI used in the global South to accomplish more more good and more impact there. So that's a goal and a dream I have.
I like it. Greg, thank you for being patient. Your question, and thanks for all the comments and questions on chat. Just a quick note, you will be able to save the chat. So at the end of the session, if you want to save the chat, you'll be able to do that. We are recording, and this will be available on our YouTube channel. So you'll also be able to see it there. Greg, go ahead.
So just first off, Tim, I like what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense to me, you know, and a few things I put in the comments here is I like a lot what Yuval Harari said, and I don't remember, I think it was in his book Homo Deus, where he talked about what separates us from the animals and what let us conquer or overcome bigger animals than us out on the savannas was our ability to work together en masse, right, to collaborate. And I'm in a position where I'm starting a new community that is based on exponential thinking and exponential technologies, because I think that's the answer to the future. I think the huge disconnect between the way we've been taught to think linearly in schools is going to prevent us from having success in the future of exponential change. So is there a book that have you written a book, or can you recommend a book that talks about your model or shows your model? And second, Ray Dalio is talking about his management style and allowing everybody, newbies, to come into a team meeting and offer opinions on everything, right? With people who are billionaires, and where that in the past that didn't used to happen, right? There were the people who had the titles and the money, and they made the decisions, and they had the input, and everybody else, the newbies especially, is supposed to shut up and sit there. What do you think about that? And
Wow,
does that
Greg,
make sense?
like, yeah, 5 great questions. I've not written a book and keep getting encouraged to, so thanks for that prompt on that. A book, interestingly enough, the book I would read related to what I do is called Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. And the reason for that is that we still believe motivation will get us there, and it will not. Right. There is zero amount of motivation transference. So even people that are motivated to go work out at gyms and pay for a gym membership, only 30% of them actually use the gym membership. That's when it's the person being motivated themselves. We're in a model where the person making the acquisition decision on technology is motivated to see data coming in that they would use, and the people creating that data are not at all on the same page, nor do they have those motivations. So understanding how to create behavior design is really critical. So that's the one book I'd recommend. In terms of exponential thinking, I mean, the next thought I have is, what does quantum thinking look like in this? And I don't even understand quantum. It just sounds like nonsense, but it is a leapfrog. And I agree with you. We've got to get away from linear thinking. But I also feel like there's a way in which that kind of quantum, you know, it's both and not even. It's all just weird. That's actually another model to look at while you're exploring like those linear models and all of that. So I think that's interesting. I would find me on LinkedIn and let's have a conversation about that, of which you will know way more than I will, but it'll still be fun. And about input. Okay, last thing on input. Whenever we work with people, our 2 main things that we're doing is fixing data and getting people to complain, because complaining is a sign of hope. When people whine, that's not helpful. But if you can get people specifically say, this is what's not working, that's what works. And what that does is that it creates a digital transformation model that starts at the edges and the bottom of the organization, not just at the middle. Now, it's important to have the middle top-down digital transformation strategy, but we need a decentralized version of digital transformation where you can just say to a team, I see you smiling, Carlos. You can just say to a team, go get started on this stuff, and it will align at some point. Don't worry about it too much. Just on any tech, any team, you can do this process and it'll work. I hope that's helpful.
It is. You know, and one last question. Have you heard of Salim Ismail and the exponential organizations model?
I have not. You are going to absolutely school me on this stuff. I love it.
I'll connect with you on LinkedIn. We should talk about that.
All right. Yeah, please
It's
do.
great to be a lifelong learner, right, Tim?
Absolutely. Like, yeah, there's so much I don't know. Keep it coming. I'd love to learn more.
And
Driss.
half this team are part of EXO, so you'd have lots to talk about.
Driss.
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. So I love the conversation. The conversation is really fantastic. So I will add like another layer to our discussion, and I will say that while I was studying my master, we were studying like the transfer of technology, okay, from one country to another country. And one of the example they were telling us that because we were trying to explain technology like tractor, like for rural and agriculture, I mean areas. So we are trying to explain the technology or to introduce technology to, for example, to a village, to a tribe. And I remember always our professor tell us about the story of like tribe chief that he will like think for a long about the technology, and he will say no. And the professor will explain us why. He told us that this chief is not against the technology, but he was against the disruption that will be caused by the technology. Okay, so my point is, and this is where I want your opinion about this. I think we are underestimating the introduction of technology inside any community, business, organization, community. So I would call it community. And I think one which we are neglecting is the technology or the design of the community, okay? Because in my opinion, it's more difficult than designing a technology. And when you are bringing inside a technology, it will have like a big disruption, okay, that we are not aware of, okay? And to be aware of, we need to understand deeply, I mean, the psychology of the one, I mean, each member, I mean, the psychology, and also, I mean, what we can call the sociology, so the community and the interaction between the members. And this is the power of the leader. Why? Because the leader, he has or she has a vision, okay? And in every second, in every decision, in our case, introducing technology, she will see, for example, Christina, she will study this and she will see if this technology is aligned with the vision, okay? The vision of our community, for example, TLL. It will be good or bad. Why I am saying this? Because I think one point which is missing here is our vision for the humanity in the future, how we want it to be. This is what is not clear. Because, okay, we are designing technology to solve a problem, but this is such linear vision. It's more complicated than this. It is, so just I want to share this idea, and I want to know your feedback, team. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Driss, what you're saying is like really interesting. And if you study development economics almost at all, you'll see like so many parallels of what you're talking about. One big difference between the leader in that situation and what's happening right now is that that leader had the option of saying no to that technology. And leaders today don't have that option. People are going to be using tech. They're going to be figuring out how to, they're going to be pulling it into organizations. And the only question is whether or not it's going to be known and official and structured, or whether it's going to be hidden and people are just going to do it because their leaders won't agree with it. And so you're absolutely right about that dynamic. We don't have the option that chief had, and it's really important to pay attention to that. Your point on complexity, Oh my gosh, absolutely. I'm taking insanely complex ideas and boiling them down to my logo. So yes, I'm simplifying all over the place. And at the same time, it's not more complicated than that. Because what I kept finding is it's bad data. It's people that say, I need this done, and nobody's listening. And it's disconnection between a person that can do something about it and the person that would do something if that person said they could. That's kind of at the heart of it. And it's really like, that is already complicated, but the ideas on it are pretty straightforward and they're so universal. Like they just all over the world, they're happening that way. So I love what you're saying there, Driss. I would be glad to continue that conversation.
Tim, I want to jump in on what you said to begin with too about that, nowadays leaders don't have the option of technology. And it also reminds me sort of like Ken Blanchard's in The Secret, where he talks about if you don't create culture, culture will be created for you.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Right? If you don't have a technology roadmap, if you don't have a technology roadmap plan, it will be created for you, right? And so it is part of that concept that really kind of needs to be brought in. And as humans, we will do that, right? We will create our own space where there is no space.
There's always a human stack. The question is, how healthy is it? Carlos, I love what you're saying.
That's a good way to put it.
There is always a human stack. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Layla.
So Tim, wonderful conversation. I definitely deeply appreciate your methodology, because it is something that anyone who's ever been in corporate has seen a million times. Whenever something tries to be introduced in the exponential organization concept, that is the immune system of the company kicking in and trying to push out what it deems to be harmful, even if it's not actually harmful, it's just different, right? When you approach companies and approach it from this standpoint that there's a human stack and a tech stack, how do they generally receive that? Do they typically get it right away? Is it something that you have to kind of like drag them to it because it makes such sense? And I'm sure they've all witnessed it as being in a company before. They have seen it in some variety of form. And I'm just wondering how do they accept it? How do they deal with it? How do they come to the idea that, this might have some validity?
I hope I don't lose all credibility when I tell you that this is so new. I am still figuring a lot of this out.
Gotcha.
And I'm making it up while I'm going, right? Like, let's be really clear. 4 years ago, I said, we don't know as a profession how to convert people to making decisions from their data. And I set off on a wild hair goose chase to figure out what that meant. And it took me 2 years to learn how to say it to my mom in a way that she would understand. Right. And I won at that by saying, Mom, it's like big tech companies are like car manufacturers. And my old company was like a car dealership, and nonprofits would come and order their car, and we'd give them the CRM key for their donor management system, and they would wreck it driving off the lot because they needed driver's ed, and we don't deliver that as a dealership, right? So that way of telling stories is so important. So Layla, my best answer on that, and I can go into, by the way, why story is so important in this, but stories are the key to getting people to understand this.
You don't have to sell me on that one. I'm always saying that myself. It is the one thing that we have that has been passed through millennia.
Yeah.
That works every time.
And because I'm such a geek, I had to understand it. And here's the chain of meaning that happens. A datum becomes a data when it's plural. That turns into information. Information turns into insight, and insight turns into story, right? So data to insight is a tech-to-tech transformation. Information to insight is a tech-to-human transformation. And story is the only human-to-human transformation. If you disconnect the story from the data, that's called manipulation, right? And that's why it's so critical to have meaning in a supply chain. And that's functionally what information systems are supposed to do, is create that supply chain of meaning. Does that make sense? So I do tell organizations about that. only organizations that are actually curious get it. And the leaders that are curious, they love it. They don't know what to do with it. And that's where we spend a lot more time together, but they love it.
I'm with you 100%. That makes so much sense. I am going to have to jump off, but that is like literally bomb drop right there.
Yeah,
So nice
that was
to
a
meet
good
you.
one.
Nice meeting you as well.
We are running low on time. I think this happened to us with David, who also is here. But if we can go a little longer, Tim, do you have a little bit of time?
I do. Yeah. I can go to top of the
Okay,
hour.
great. All right,
Or wait,
so
are
we're
we
going to
going to
go
top of
long
the hour
again,
anyway?
Christina. I'm sorry?
What time are we scheduled to be done?
We are used
One.
to go over maybe 10 minutes. The
Yeah,
last
yeah, I'm good with that. I'd love to. I could talk about this all year long and be totally happy. So,
And hi,
like, let's
everyone
do it.
who joined us later. And David, happy to see you, everyone here.
Hi,
Danielle.
everyone.
Hey, David. Daniel.
I love this. This is right up my alley. It's a strange thing, Tim. Of all people, I became friends with Tony Robbins years ago, long time ago. And Tony started out kind of gimmicky, right? He had these gimmicks that you could use, and then he transformed and he started talking about, what really matters. And he went through a personal transformation. I know this. And now he talks about making habits, he uses that word all the time. So, he's a juggernaut. He's an industry into himself. But I'm going to get your book. There is no doubt about that. I'm going to read it. The thing that I signed up for a personal trainer. It was very expensive. It was only for 4 months. But in those 4 months, it took me, he says that's the time it takes to develop a habit. Repetition for 4 months. And he was right about fitness, because I haven't skipped a beat. And he and I stopped in September, and I just kept going. And what do you think about that? What's your idea about repetition leading to making these tiny habits work?
I mean, it's so funny you say personal trainer, and Daniel, I see that hand. So thanks for your patience. It's so funny you say that, because when I started looking at this, I asked the question, who gets fired if they cannot create behavior change in someone else? And there are very, very few of us that will put our money behind someone else changing, right? That's a unique situation there. And personal trainers was the industry looking a lot at that model and what happens there. And a few things that I thought were really interesting about it. One is that if you get a personal trainer, half of the value is that somebody will meet you there, right? That is so, we are so weird about this, right? I'm not going to go, I don't want to work out, I don't want to do this thing. But if I go meet someone there, they'll make me do the thing I don't want to do, right? Like, you could just go to the gym and eat a sandwich if you don't have a personal trainer. But if you got a personal trainer, they're going to actually make you work way harder, right? And so that was really interesting. The second thing I noticed was they make it easier, right? All these little transactions you don't think about. They're holding the clipboard. They're like telling you what next machine to go to. They're saying how many reps. It's the most metric-driven relationship ever. Pick up this many things this times per week, this many reps on these number of machines for this many months, and you'll see this number change on a scale, right? Like, that is a completely metric-driven, accountability-focused result, and yet it works because it's relational. So we've got this weird dichotomy that things are either numeric or they are relational, and that's not true. That's not true at all. That's not how it works. And so that was and then the last thing I'll say about this is for a while I thought, okay, it's because that person holds accountability, and they don't. That's not who holds accountability, right? It's the wife or the girlfriend or somebody else. That's the accountability structure. This is an alongside-er. And when I structured the methodology, I kept that really clear. The accountability lives, independently of that tactical relationship. So love that you brought that up, David. Really good example.
Danielle, you had a question.
Yes, Tim, I have been enjoying your presentation a lot. During your presentation, I have been remembering that when I was flying during 40 years, for us, interoperability and communication was especially important because we attach interoperability to the technology changes, and we attach communication to the emotional side. And we have to link the two together, because if we fail to do that, we will be in a big problem. Remember that last December there was an accident in Japan, landing a big airplane because there were problems with the communication. And also maybe technology has failed because maybe there were something that was not working in the right way. My question to you is, how can organizations develop strategies to measure and enhance the interoperability and communication between technology and the human, while account for the two main parts of what you have been talking about, technology and communication? How can we link the two together to have a real answer from the people? Because in our case, we attach that to saving lives, and for us was very important all the time, also today, without flying. And what about with your important job that you are working with the companies?
It's a really great question. I would put I mean, it's very insightful to identify how critical communication is in this entire process. What I would say is that communication is an engagement factor, and it's not the only one. So to me, it is a hierarchy, and engagement is one level up. And I mean, I'm just thinking about this right now, but as I think about it, and the reason that's important is because we when we're implementing technology, we have a tendency to focus on the execution of that implementation. And we know how to do that with, the different methodologies that we have. And with small organizations, the execution is what's hard. With large organizations, the engagement's what's hard, right? Because when you're smaller, the communication is a lot more natural. In really small organizations, everybody knows everybody, and that creates a much easier communication channel. As organizations grow, they need to focus less on the execution of technology and more on the engagement. And that engagement is a factor of, is an energy factor. And so what really happens is if you focus on establishing the right energy, that engagement will happen, including the right kind of conversation. Now, or communication. There are absolutely some communications that have to happen. And for those ones, you need to establish habits around that communication. In my methodology, for example, there's a monthly stakeholder meeting. And if that gets skipped, it all falls apart for lots of different reasons. And so the communication of getting the right stakeholders there for the different agenda items was a missing piece for a long time. You'd show up at that meeting, you wouldn't have the right stakeholders there. It could take, 2 quarters to get to the right decision by having the 6 correct stakeholders in the room. Just by clarifying who's communicating that and on what frequency, we started making decisions like quarters earlier and faster because we had the right people in the right room, which all depended on the communications that we were talking about. So I don't know if that answers your question. I think it is absolutely essential though. And it's a metric of, the right kind of energy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And on that note, I think that we're a little over time. So with closing it out, I think we'll be just 10 minutes over, which might be a record for us. So I'm glad that everyone enjoys these conversations. I know I do. Tim, thank you for coming on the show and putting a little humanity into technology. Obviously, TLL, we care about our 3 pillars: technology, community, and humanity. So thanks for kind of contributing to that conversation. Kind of just wrapping up and some notes. Please don't forget to visit and share the information on our website for our event coming up. The intersection of climate, AI, and humanity. You can find it at techleadershiplab.org/TLL Summit 2024. Get it out there. It's on LinkedIn. Registration's available. As you can see, we will have a great set of conversations over a 3-day period. We have some of our speakers are here, and they're going to be joining us. So definitely go out there, check it out. Remember to register, share it with your network. The more support we can get, the more we would appreciate it. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact any of the core members, and we look forward to our next conversation. Thank you, everyone.